This new feature is about to turn the share button into your new best friend. Should Microsoft bring this canceled title back from the grave? Phil and Todd have lofty ambitions for Starfield, and for the millionth time, is Call of Duty going to be exclusive to Xbox? Down in the description, you'll also find a link with instructions on how you can win your very own Series X from me. Let's discuss. So on November 11th of this year, exactly 11 years after the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim was released to the world, Bethesda is going to be releasing its new game, Starfield. Now, this is a massive deal because this is Bethesda's first new IP in literal decades, and although we don't know too much about the game, we know that it's an open-world sci-fi RPG that is being billed by Todd Howard himself as Skyrim in space. And you just gotta love it when people pull out the Skyrim club when it comes to marketing. I remember when Far Cry, that was Skyrim, but with guns, but it hits a little bit different when it's coming from Todd Howard himself. Now, the last significant thing we heard about Starfield was when it was confirmed that it was going to be an Xbox exclusive. There was a lot of buzz around that, lots of opinions being thrown around on Twitter, but other than that, we haven't really heard too much. Now it's in the headlines again because Phil Spencer made a comment saying that he wants Starfield to be Bethesda's most played title ever. Most played, most sold, however you want to call it, which is obviously a pretty tall order when you consider that Skyrim, over its entire lifespan, sold 30 million copies. In an interview with VGC, Phil Spencer commented on just how cool it was to see how many more people were playing the second Psychonauts game in comparison to the first Psychonauts game. He added, "So when I look at the teams, when Todd and I talk about Starfield, it's how do we make sure this is the most played Todd Howard game ever?" He then went on to talk about Forza Horizon 5 and Halo Infinite, mentioning how they both had really big launches for Xbox. Now, I know what some people are gonna say when they see this, right? If Phil Spencer wants this to be the most played Bethesda game ever, why won't he release it on PlayStation? And for that, I couldn't tell you, man. I know Sony, a lot of the time, goes out of their way to make sure that titles are kept off of other platforms to drive traffic to their products, but it's just business. That's all I could say, I guess. Game Pass, like Forza Horizon 5 and like Halo Infinite, is probably going to be the deciding factor in just how many people play this game, right? We already know that the subscription model is popular amongst general consumers, the general public, if you will, and we also know that lowering the price barrier, the cost it will take to play this game, is really helpful in luring in a new player base. It'll also be interesting to see whether or not PC players take to this game. We kind of saw their power when it comes to Halo Infinite. People were freaking out when Halo Infinite's numbers were dropping on Steam. So, in this world where Microsoft wants to have this inclusive ecosystem, there could be a future where more than half of their player base for these games are indeed PC players. So whether they like it or not, that's probably going to be a huge factor in deciding whether or not this is going to be the most played Bethesda game ever. Now, there are a few things in this interview that I don't necessarily agree with. First of all, I don't think it's a good idea to hold up Halo Infinite as a shining example of success just yet, right? They had a really strong launch, and I really enjoyed it. They said that over 20 million people played Halo Infinite at launch, making it the biggest Halo launch ever. But we also know that recently they're struggling to retain their players. They've dropped off on Steam, like I mentioned, and they've fallen out of the top 5 played games on Xbox. Now, Bethesda Studios has a way better track record than 343 Industries. Not saying that I hate 343, I know a lot of people do, but I'm saying that Bethesda, they're like legendary, right? And 343 Studios, it's, you know, kind of like comparing apples and oranges. So hopefully, Starfield doesn't encounter the same problem as Infinite, wherein they lose a ton of their players within the first couple of months. There's also the question on what this game is actually going to look like. We haven't seen any gameplay yet. We know that it's going to be Skyrim in space, right? It's going to be open world, emphasis on exploration. Todd Howard has also said that there's going to be some Fallout-like elements to it, like different factions, and what he calls step-out moments, wherein the world, the landscape, is revealed to the player in a really dramatic, theatrical way, kind of like when you step out of a vault in any of the Fallout games. Todd Howard has also said that they're using all of their expertise that they've garnered working on the Elder Scrolls series and the Fallout series, and they're just kind of combining it all. So hopefully we see those influences shine through, but are able to move on to something new and exciting. You know, we've been playing Skyrim for many years at this point, so I think we're all hungry for a fresh experience experience from Bethesda. I also feel like there's a ton of pressure for this game to do well. I'm super hyped for it, but I feel like a lot of people are being very skeptical. I feel like a lot of people are hating on it specifically because Microsoft is involved. If Microsoft was out of the picture, they'd be like, oh my god, this game's gonna be amazing, I can't wait for it, it's gonna be awesome. But as soon as you add Microsoft Xbox in, people are like, oh boo, they suck, they're gonna ruin this game. And if it doesn't do well, if for whatever reason it doesn't live up to the expectations, we all know who people are gonna blame, right? They're gonna blame Microsoft. It's also Xbox's first big Bethesda RPG since the ZeniMax acquisition, so they really need just a clean-cut win. It releases with no controversies, no craziness, just a clean win. It's a great game. Unlike Halo Infinite, where it launches and people are complaining about it, there's a lot of controversy about the player count and the store and things like that. They just need a clean win with this. So PlatinumGames is a Japanese-based studio that I personally know them best for their work on Nier Automata. But they're also known for developing all sorts of other games, like the first 2 Bayonetta games, and of course the upcoming Bayonetta 3, and Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. But we're not here to talk about the games that Platinum already did. We're here to talk about the game that never was. I'm talking about Scalebound. Now, Scalebound was supposed to be a third-person action RPG that was going to be exclusive to Xbox One consoles. The main thing about this game was that you got to control a dragon. You had a big dragon companion that you could command in combat. You can shift to its perspective and play as the dragon. You could even ride it around at later levels. Now, this game was announced back at E3 in 2014, and it was supposed to release holiday season of 2016, and then tragically it was canceled in January 2017. They just scrapped it altogether. Now, this was just yet another low point in the Xbox One era. It was super disappointing. Not often do you see high-profile games like that just get canceled seemingly out of nowhere, and there was a lot of gameplay being showcased already, a lot of previews, so it was gut-wrenching at the time. I think they were saying, oh, we have other exciting titles like Halo Wars 2 and State of Decay 2 and a couple of others, but it still stung. It also reinforced the narrative that cool IPs, when they go over to Xbox, to Microsoft, they go there to die. But the president of PlatinumGames has expressed interest in reviving Scalebound. He says often in an interview you might hear a developer politely saying, yes, if we had the opportunity, we'd love to work on that again, but we don't mean it that way. Both Kamiya and I are serious. We really would love to work on Scalebound again. I'd like to discuss it with Microsoft properly. Development had progressed a fair way, and it seems pointless for Microsoft to just hold on to that and not do anything with it. He then switched to English for this last part, saying, Phil, let's do it together. Now, I know that words are just words, right? But in this case, they do seem sincere, right? And in the past, PlatinumGames has expressed regret, and they've kind of felt bad about how Microsoft took the brunt of the blame when it came to this cancellation. In 2019, they said, we want to make sure that the publisher who gave us a chance to make a game in the first place isn't treated poorly. The truth is, we don't like to see Microsoft take the brunt of the fan ire, because game development is hard, and both sides learned lessons, for sure. Now again, all nice words. I personally don't hold anything against PlatinumGames. I know some people, there are rumors floating around out there that PlatinumGames used the money that Microsoft was giving them to develop Scalebound to fund other projects, and they were essentially robbing them. And then Jez Corden came out and said, no, that's just a rumor to a certain extent, but we'll really never know, right? I wasn't in the room, I can't say definitively what happened. At the end of the day, it just seemed like a poor match. The catch here is that it seems like the ball is in Microsoft's court when it comes to reviving Scalebound. And personally, I'm not sure how likely it is that they pull the trigger on that. I really don't see the need that Scalebound fits in terms of Microsoft's current projects. On one hand, it'd kind of be a really awesome redemption arc for both PlatinumGames and Microsoft. On the other hand, Microsoft has its hands full on all these other titles, all these studios that fall under Xbox Studios, so I imagine that their plate is pretty full. unless they repurpose Scalebound into a single-player experience, kind of like a Nier Automata clone, I don't see a huge need for Xbox right now. IO Interactive, the people who made Hitman, are also working on something for Xbox that is sort of similar. It's working under the title Project Dragon, and this is apparently going to be a 10-year title, according to the people working on it, and the description is very much the same. It involves dragons, action, RPG elements. It could get a little bit crowded, a little bit cluttered if they decided to develop Scalebound in addition to that. Now, since news broke that Microsoft made a deal to acquire Activision Blizzard, the big question on everyone's mind has been exclusivity, right? Are these big franchises like Call of Duty going to be exclusive to Xbox going forward? It's the same sort of thing that happened when Microsoft acquired ZeniMax Media, when Sony acquired Bungie. That's those same sort of anxieties continually pop up when things like this happen. Microsoft and Activision Blizzard, they were using very careful language when it came to this. They were saying, yeah, we're going to honor the contractual agreements that were made before we agreed to this deal. And that led a lot of people to believe that, okay, once these contracts are over, they're going to handle it like they did with Bethesda stuff and then make all the titles after the contract ends exclusive to Xbox, including me. I kind of thought that as well. Bloomberg also reported that the next 3 Call of Duties were going to be multi-platform, but after that they weren't sure. But I'm here to tell you, for real this time, we now know that Call of Duty is going to be multi-plat even after those 3 titles I was just talking about. Microsoft's president said, "To be clear, Microsoft will continue to make Call of Duty and other popular Activision Blizzard titles available on PlayStation through the term of any existing agreement with Activision. And we have committed to Sony that we will also make them available on PlayStation beyond the existing agreement and into the future, so that Sony fans can continue to enjoy the games they love." Now, this probably covers the big ones, right? Call of Duty, Overwatch, Diablo. Those last 2, Overwatch and Diablo, those aren't just games that are on PlayStation either. They're also on Switch. And they also said, don't worry, we're going to bring those titles to Switch. We're going to support them as well. So Switch people, you don't have to worry. Like I'm referring to them like an alien race or something. I have a Switch, by the way. It also seems really similar to Bungie's statement regarding continued multi-plat support for Destiny. I don't know if that had anything to do with this decision. Honestly, it could also mean that they want to keep these titles multi-platform, at least the big ones from Activision Blizz, because they don't want to lose that cash cow. They want it to be a guaranteed seller no matter what. Maybe just in case this whole Bethesda exclusivity thing doesn't turn out to be as lucrative as they thought, but that's super pessimistic though. I will say though that even though the bigger IPs from Activision Blizzard are going to be multi-platform, that doesn't exclude all the other titles that come with that acquisition. We could very well see Xbox exclusive stuff coming from this deal. At the end of the day, whether or not it's exclusive, Call of Duty is a very valuable franchise to have. It's going to make Microsoft a ton of money, and it's going to give Game Pass a huge boost. That's not even including all the other stuff that comes with this acquisition. Call of Duty alone will put Game Pass in another tax bracket. Now, the Xbox controller as we know it today, it didn't really change too much from last generation's Xbox One controller. It's a little bit more compact than the Xbox One version. You know, they threw on some textures on the grips and then on the triggers as well. The D-pad is a little bit more fancier, gives you a little bit more fine control, especially when it comes to things like fighting games. But the main difference for the series controller has been the addition of the share button right here in the middle. Now, the capture button in theory is a good idea, right? Just by pressing a button, you can take a screenshot, you can record gameplay, and in a world where social media is such a big thing and we're constantly sharing things online, that's a great idea, right? In practice, however, I feel like I really don't use it too much, and that's part of a bigger problem that Microsoft is trying to address: DVR issues, screenshot issues, sharing them from your console to the world, things like that. Sometimes when I take screenshots using this button, it straight up just doesn't work. Right? It tells me, oh, the screenshot failed. And I'm like, what do you mean failed? That all you gotta do is just like snap a little picture. What are you talking about? Recording videos on this is also sort of weird, especially if you're capturing on internal storage. You never know quite when the clip is going to start, right? The parameters of that are super confusing. A lot of games nowadays, they have a straight up photo mode, making this pretty much redundant, right? And I also have a capture card now, and that's way easier to record gameplay to without having to do the dance So if I record it to my Xbox, I take it out, I transfer it to my computer, it all just goes straight to my computer. But now Microsoft is doing its best to bring some utility, some much needed love to the share button in the middle of your controller. Alpha skip ahead insiders are testing a feature that allows them to remap the press, hold, and double tap functions of the share button. They can remap it to do a ton of things like open the Xbox guide, send a message, search, launch an app or game, play or pause media, turn your TV's volume up, down, or mute it, view achievements, friends, or party, access quick setting, and toggle night mode, color filters, narrator, or magnifier. Now, some of these are more valuable than others, right? If you want to play or pause media, usually that's just the A button. Or if you're watching a DVD or Blu-ray, you press B and then you press A. That's it. I also don't know a ton of people that would like a second guide button. I'm not sure how useful that would be. Toggling different color options could be super useful though. Imagine that you have a separate color setting for each type of game that you play, FPS, RTS, RPG, when you're in the dashboard, and you can cycle through those different settings that you have customized for each game style just by pressing the button, double tapping a button, holding down a button. That would be super awesome. Or if you want to toggle some accessibility features on like subtitles, that would be really awesome too. Rather than going into the options of the game, toggling it that way, all I gotta do is just press my share button. While they're at it, they should probably show that same treatment to the start and select buttons, right? Especially on the dashboard. These two buttons, they seem to do the same thing, right? The select button, it allows you to change your Xbox home, and then the start button, it allows you to also sort of do that, but also manage certain apps. It's a little strange. Now again, this feature is only available right now to people who are in the Alpha Skip Ahead Insider program. But usually when they start testing these features, it's only about a couple of months until they roll it out to everyone who owns an Xbox. Anyway guys, that's all the news I have for today. Make sure you go and follow me on Twitter at StayXboxReady, or do not. I am not a beggar. Down in the description, you'll also find a link with instructions on how you can win your very own Series X from me. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next video.